Hi, Amanda here from Patchwork and Papercraft. Last time I showed you all the various things you would really need to make a quilt from the fundamentals. There was one I missed out, and that's one of these. This is a ruler, but it's a square one. They come in all sorts of different sizes. This one is, as you can see, 12.5 square. This one, which is a little bit smaller, 9.5 square. And then they go down to this one, which is 8.5. And you can get 6.5, 5.5. This one is a little one, 4.5. You can get all sorts. You don't need all of them, but it is very, very useful to have one. Okay. And the larger, if you're only going to get one, get a larger one. Okay, what are we going to make then? Well, as I promised, I'm going to use a charm square, that's 5-inch squares, to make a quilt. So it's only going to be a small quilt. It's not going to be a big one. Don't panic. It'll be a little one. And we're not going to just leave them as squared. We're going to make it a little bit more interesting. Because it's all very well to say, well, I'm a beginner. But you don't want a beginner quilt to look like a beginner quilt, do you? You want it to look, I don't know, a bit more accomplished. So I've done a sketch of what we're going to do. Ignore the colours because the colours aren't correct, but that was just to give you an idea. So hopefully you can see this. As you can see, we've got what's called 4 patches because you've got 4 pieces joined together with another little bit in between. Don't panic, we'll get to that. And a border around the outside. And the whole thing will end up, hopefully, somewhere around 30 to 32 inches square, depending on how good your seams are. Okay. So, let's get on. Amanda here from Patchwork and Papercraft, and we're carrying on with our how to make a quilt from the first principles. Okay, now I've already opened this because I just had a disaster with my last video. But anyway, this pack is called Strawberry Lemonade. It's by Sherri and Chelsi from Moda Fabrics. It's a charm pack, 5-inch squares. I've taken out 5 different squares. Doesn't matter which ones you choose. 4 different squares. Doesn't matter which ones you choose because they are all coordinated. Every single one will go together. Okay, what next? Well, next we need to get the machine set up. So we've threaded it, and I'm using white, but you don't have to. You can use whatever colour you like. Now, you need to make sure that your seams are going to be 1/4 inch, and there are 2 ways you can do that. You can use this stuff. This is called quarter-inch tape, and it has your sewing line and a black line where your 1/4 inches on each side. And you have to put it on yourself, but it's fairly straightforward. Alternatively, if you don't want to buy anything extra, if you look at your machine, this is a 1/4 inch foot. The joins to the machine there, it sews through that hole. It's got 3 little marks on it because the machines have a centre, and then you can move it to the left or to the right usually. So the centre line is the one we're going to be using. And then on either side, I'm not entirely sure I can get this into focus so that you can see it, but you can see, you might be able to see this faint line down this side, and there's another one on that side. Yeah, and they're 1/4 inch lines. And you can tell that if you get a ruler, and here's my ruler, and you line it up from the centre line, you'll be able to tell where the 1/4 inch is. Now, as you can see, if I were to use the edge of the machine, of the foot instead, I'd be using it to there, which is over 1/4 inch. You can't even see that, can you? Let me move it back in. do that again. Terribly sorry. So if I line it up on the edge so that the centre line is in at the edge of the ruler, mark where it comes to. As you can see, that is the 1/4 inch mark. It came to there. Yes, from there to that mark there, 1/4 inch. If I do it from the edge, from the centre to the very edge, it comes out to, let's put it on line properly, comes out to there, which as you can see is over 1/4 inch. But if you find that easier, go with that. It's more important to be consistent than it is anything else. All right. Now, obviously, if your seams are more than 1/4 inch, you're going to take more fabric for the same amount, for the same size of quilt. All right. So next, we take 2 of our pieces and we put them together, pretty sides together. Now, got to be fairly accurate about this, because if you're not and it goes like that, I mean, that's really exaggerated. But you're going to open it up and it's not going to be a nice seam at all. They're not going to match. They're not going to go together nicely. You're not going to end up with nice squares. So we carefully make sure that the edges match. And then we pin them together. Now, I like to pin that way, so at the edge, the pin is sticking out of the end of the fabric. But you can just as easily pin, oops, not quite together. There we go. You can, if you prefer, pin that way. Okay. Move those out of the way. Now we line up our fabric to the little mark on the sewing machine foot, or of course to the black line on your sewing tape if you've got some. And we start to sew, and we sew quite slowly to start with. When we get to the pin or near the pin, remove it. You can occasionally sew over them, but you do run the risk that if your needle hits the pin, your needle could bend. The whole thing could explode. You know, the pin could, well, not explode really, but break into pieces. And this is why I prefer to do it like that, because when you get to the other sort, it's a bit more difficult to get it out. Yeah, there we go. Now when I get to the end, I'm going to get the next 2 and I'm going to join those together in exactly the same way. Okay, once you've done lots and lots, you probably won't even need to pin them, but I'll pin them for you just to show you how I'm doing it. Line it up, lift the foot if you want, put it back down so you know it's in. Incidentally, don't watch the needle going up and down. If you do, you'll make yourself dizzy. Only watch the material and the point on the foot that you want, or the, you know, or the line on the tape if you're using it. And you can go a bit faster when you get okay. Let me take it out. And we cut the thread, set them apart. Okay, so now we've got 2 twos, and what we do now is we open them up and we run our finger, the nail or the pad of your finger, gently pull them apart. Can you see that? And you just run your finger down there, just to open the seam, to make the seam fall a little bit flatter. I'll do that again on this one. So you hold it like that and down it comes. Okay, so we've got 2 twos. Now we've got to do the same thing again, but we join them together. Now at this point, let's see if I can show you on this side. we've got these things, the seams that we've just made. If they're both going in the same way, you've got a lot of fabric there. So what you do is you turn it so that you've got one going one way, the other one going the other way, and you move them together until they sort of click into place. They join together, if you like. That's called nesting your seams. And it's how you get a really good seam. And to hold it there, stick a pin in it, like so. Then bring your edges together and make sure they match. And I'll pin that end. And then we join these ends together. Grab a pin. And we join that end together. And then we do exactly the same thing again. So we line it up with our mark. Make sure that you're not doing this, because if it's at that sort of an angle, you aren't going to get a very interesting, nice seam in between. They're not going to match. You need all your big squares to be the same size when you're finished, of course, so that they all join together nicely. There we go. Coming along. To the seam, we're going to just make sure that it is together still. It is, it should be, of course, because we've had it pinned. And it's at this point I'm going to warn you of something. Don't grab it and pull it. If you pull your fabric while you're doing it, you'll make the seam go that sort of shape, banana shaped, and then it'll never fit properly. No matter what you do, you'll never get it to fit properly. You have to let the machine pull the material through for you. If it's not doing that, there's something wrong with the machine. It's not set up properly. Okay, so you can hold the fabric, you can guide the fabric, but you must not pull at it. And that's actually really difficult when you first start. You do pull your fabric. There we go. Okay, we'll open it up. And I'll do the same thing again, all the way along. It's in a bit too far really to show you what I'm doing, but hopefully you can see it like that. And what we're doing is we're laying it flat. So we've got a 4 patch. If I move this out a little bit so you can see it a bit better. There we go. There we got a 4 patch. And you're going to need to do that with all of the squares in your pack. How can you tell what you've done wrong though? Well, I've done a couple here for you. Now this one first, as you can see, I hope, it doesn't lie quite straight, doesn't lie flat. You've got edges that's sort of like a banana. This end comes in. You know that it's wrong, and you know it's wrong when you look at it and you think, what on earth have I done wrong? Well, what you've done on this particular one is, when you did your 1/4 inch seams, you weren't all that careful. They're not quite matching, or it's bigger in one place than it is in another. So if you've got a slightly wiggly line, if they're not quite matching, that's what's going to happen. It's going to end up rucked up, and you can't, no matter what you do, you can't possibly straighten it. Another thing you might have done is when you came to nest your seams, perhaps you didn't nest them correctly. Now these two are slightly off. One's there and the other one is there. So there's a bit of a gap between the two seams. And when you open it up, what you find is that you have edges that really don't, there you are, you can see it on this one much easier. They just don't match, they don't meet. And again, the whole thing looks a bit wonky-fied. So you have got to be careful to make sure that your seams are nested in the middle and that your seams are, if not a 1/4 inch, that they are consistent, that they're always the same. That if you start at 1/2 inch, you'll end at 1/2 inch. So we've made our 4 patches, and now we need to square them up. Well, that means, you know, making them square. To start off with, you need to know how big they are. Now, if you've done your seams exactly, when you lay your ruler on the top, you would find that it would measure 9.5 in both directions. However, there's 9 across there, 9.5 down there. Chances are they won't. So I'm going to show you how to cut them down in size slightly so that they'll all be the same. And the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to cut them down to 9. Now on this ruler, let me see if I can show you, there's a dotted line just here on the 4.5 each way. And if I line that up in the very, very centre, so that it's just here, 4.5 going along there and up there. And then using my rotary cutter, I can cut the edges off. That's that one. I'll turn it around a bit, put the 4.5 back in the middle, and cut it. Turn it round, 4.5 back in the middle. Nicely lines up, cut, and on the last side, 4.5, 4.5, and of course over here, if on the last one, it should be 9 and 9 on the outside edge, just to make absolutely sure you've done it right. There we go. And you end up with a square measuring 9 by 9. Not sure if I can show you that. Let me take the phone over to here just to show you that it's the 9 line coming up here. When you get to the other end, it's also the 9 line from that end. And that's how you cut them, and you need to cut all of your 10 like that, so that they're all 9 by 9. If you were to just do it and cut them all off on one side, they wouldn't match later on. That's why we have to take off a little bit all the way round so that it's each one stays the same size. I hope that makes sense. So let's carry on. But what about if the centre doesn't line up? You know, they don't match. My X isn't an X. I haven't got an add sign in the middle. What do I do? Well, line up your 4.5 line as close to the middle of that section as you can, so that your lines are lining up with your 2 seams. Then hold it very still, press hard and cut. Here we go. And then we can turn it and cut it. Just line it up as best you can with the 4.5 in the middle. There we go. And cut. And turn and cut. And that's how you do it. You should now have 10 completed 4 patches, all sized to 9 by 9. Give them a quick iron, press I should say, and put them aside. Next time we're going to lay our quilt out and make it into the front of our quilt. Now you can leave your 4 patches exactly as they are, or, as I've said before, we can make them a little bit prettier by adding these squares. To do this, you're going to need a contrasting colour. You're going to need 2.5-inch squares, 40 of them. And at the start of the next episode, I will show you how to cut them out. But as I say, you do not need to do that step if you don't want to. In any event, I'll see you next time. Bye.